Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be diving into the world of autonomous vehicle cybersecurity
No.
with this document called the Autonomous Vehicle Cybersecurity Development Lifecycle,
Mhm.
AVCDL for short.
Yeah.
Um, and it's essentially a blueprint for making sure that self-driving cars don't,
Right.
become robots on the road.
Yeah.
So we've got a few things to help us unpack this today.
Okay.
We've got research papers, we've got articles, and we've even got a few real-world case studies.
Cool.
Now, you might be thinking, why should I care about this? Well,
Yeah.
think about it. Would you feel safe knowing that your car could be hacked?
Yeah, that's definitely a valid concern, and I think that's exactly why this AVCDL exists.
Okay.
It's all about building security
Yeah.
into every step of the process,
Okay.
from the initial design all the way to when the car is finally retired.
So if you were tasked with building the most secure autonomous vehicle ever,
hmm
how would this document guide you?
Well, what I think is so fascinating is that the AVCDL isn't just a one-time checklist.
Right.
It's a continuous cycle of improvement.
Interesting.
So it's like constantly updating your phone's software
Right.
to patch vulnerabilities.
To stay ahead of those pesky hackers.
Exactly, yeah. And the document even recommends using specific standards,
Okay.
like ISO 21827 and NIST SP 800-171 to make sure that security measures are always evolving.
That makes a lot of sense,
Yeah.
especially with technology changing so rapidly these days.
Right.
But let's break this down a bit further.
Okay.
How does the AVCDL actually work in practice?
Think of it like building a house.
Okay.
First, you need a solid foundation,
Mm-hmm.
which in the AVCDL world means assembling your team,
Right.
defining everyone's roles,
Gotcha.
and picking the right tools.
Like the software and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you create the blueprints or requirements
Okay.
where you figure out what security features you need for this specific vehicle. And finally, you move on to the design phase where you actually start putting those security features into the design itself.
So these first three phases are really all about that upfront planning,
Yes.
making sure that security is baked into the very core of the vehicle.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that I find most surprising about the AVCDL.
Okay.
It really emphasizes planning and prevention rather than reacting to problems after they occur.
Interesting.
It's about being proactive, not reactive.
That's a really good point because it seems a little counterintuitive at first.
Yeah.
But it makes so much sense to plan for security from the very beginning rather than trying to, patch things up later.
Right.
It's like they say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
That's a great analogy.
So speaking of prevention,
Yeah.
the AVCDL also addresses the security of the components and software that are provided by suppliers.
Yeah.
Because even if you build your vehicle with the best security in mind,
Right.
a faulty part from a supplier could create a huge vulnerability.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like building a house with substandard materials.
Right.
Doesn't matter how strong the foundation is, the house won't be secure.
The AVCDL mandates that there is a shared responsibility across the entire supply chain, ensuring that everyone involved adheres to those same high security standards.
Yeah, they call it building a secure ecosystem.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this planning stage with a strong foundation, detailed blueprints,
Right.
and a secure design,
Yeah.
all while making sure that the suppliers are up to par. What happens next?
That's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak.
Okay,
We move into the implementation phase where the design is brought to life.
so that's coding time.
Yes. But the AVCDL goes beyond just writing code that works.
Okay,
It emphasizes secure coding practices that minimize vulnerabilities.
okay.
It's like writing a recipe, but instead of ingredients, you're using code. And the goal is to make sure that no one can tamper with the recipe or add harmful ingredients.
So what are some specific ways that the AVCDL ensures that the code is truly secure code?
Well, they mandate things like static and dynamic analysis, which are like spell checks and test drives for your code.
Okay.
They even require something called fuzz testing.
Okay.
Imagine bombarding the system with random inputs, kind of like a stress test, to see if it breaks.
Interesting.
And if it does, you need to reinforce that part of the code.
So it's all about finding and fixing those weaknesses before they can be exploited.
Exactly, and they don't stop there.
Okay.
The AVCDL even mandates secure coding reviews, where actual humans are examining the code to catch anything that the automated tools might have missed.
So it's machines and humans working together to build that security.
Working in harmony.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I'm starting to get a real sense of just how detailed and thorough this framework is.
And we're just scratching the surface.
Oh, wow.
Once the code is built,
Yeah.
it's time to make sure that it truly holds up under scrutiny.
So that sounds like the verification phase that we touched on earlier,
You got it.
where the real testing begins.
This is where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm excited. So we've built our super secure autonomous vehicle, at least in the digital world.
Right.
But how do we know that it can actually stand up to, real world threats?
Yeah, that's a great question.
That's where the verification phase comes in, right?
Exactly. This is where we put all that meticulous planning and secure coding to the test.
Okay.
And the AVCDL does not mess around when it comes to verification.
So what are some of the key things that they do in this phase?
Well, first of all, remember those threat models that we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Those hypothetical attack scenarios?
Mhm.
The AVCDL requires revisiting those models to make sure that they're still relevant and accurate.
Okay.
It's like double-checking the blueprints after the house is built
Right.
to make sure that everything matches up.
You want to make sure that none of those potential vulnerabilities have changed now that the system is fully built.
Precisely. And then comes the really exciting part,
Okay.
penetration testing.
Yeah. Okay, this is where we get to unleash the ethical hackers.
You got it. This is where a team of skilled security professionals simulates real-world attacks
Wow.
to see if they can find any weaknesses in the system.
So they're basically trying to break in.
It's like a controlled break-in to expose any vulnerabilities that might have slipped through the cracks during development.
So if they can find a way in, that means that the developers need to go back and reinforce that part of the system.
Exact. It's all about identifying and fixing those weaknesses before someone with malicious intent can exploit them.
That's reassuring.
Yeah.
But even after all of that testing and analysis, the AVCDL doesn't just say, okay, you're good to go.
Right.
There's still more, right?
That's right. Even the most thorough testing can't anticipate every possible scenario.
Right.
So the AVCDL mandates something called a verification gate
Okay.
before moving on.
What is a verification gate?
Think of it like a final quality assurance check,
Okay.
where a team of experts reviews all of the testing and analysis that's been done to make absolutely sure that the system meets all those stringent security requirements.
So it's like the final sign-off to say, yep, this vehicle is as secure as we can possibly make it, given everything we know right now.
Exactly.
Okay.
But even then, the AVCDL acknowledges that cybersecurity isn't a one-and-done deal.
So it doesn't end there.
Nope. The journey continues into the release phase.
Okay.
And even beyond.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Walk me through this release phase.
Okay.
What happens once the vehicle has passed through all of those rigorous checks and gates?
Well, first of all, there's another security review.
Another one.
I know it sounds like overkill,
Yeah.
but the AVCDL is all about being thorough.
Okay.
This review ensures that all the security requirements have been met and that any identified vulnerabilities have been properly addressed or mitigated.
So it's like a final once-over to catch any last-minute issues before the vehicle is actually released to the public.
Exactly. And it's also about making sure that all the necessary security documentation is archived for future reference.
Oh, so it's like a detailed logbook of everything that's been done, just in case there are any issues down the road.
Exactly. It's all about being prepared and having a complete record of the development process,
Okay.
including all the security decisions that were made along the way.
Gotcha.
And then, of course, we have the release gate.
Another gate.
Yes, but this one marks a major milestone.
Okay.
The release gate is the final checkpoint before the autonomous vehicle is actually deployed into the real world.
So this is like the green light to say, okay, this vehicle is ready to go. It's as secure as we can make it.
Precisely. But the AVCDL doesn't stop there.
Oh, wow.
In fact, you could argue that the most important part of the journey is just beginning.
You mean after the vehicle is out on the road with real people in it?
Exactly. That's when the operation phase begins.
So the AVCDL continues to play a role even after the vehicle is driving around.
Absolutely. The operation phase recognizes that security is an ongoing process,
Okay.
not just a one-time event.
I'm starting to see a pattern here. The AVCDL is all about constant vigilance.
You've got in this vigilance is critical during the operation phase.
Okay.
This is where monitoring the system, identifying and addressing any new vulnerabilities,
Right.
and ensuring that the security measures remain effective over time become paramount.
So even though the vehicle has passed all those tests and checks,
Right.
they're still keeping an eye on it to make sure that nothing slips through the cracks.
Exactly. Think about it like this.
Okay.
You wouldn't just buy a car and never take it in for maintenance, right?
Oh, of course not.
The same goes for the cybersecurity of an autonomous vehicle.
Makes sense.
It needs regular checkups and updates to ensure that it stays secure.
So what kind of things happen during these checkups in the operation phase?
Well, the AVCDL recommends conducting regular security assessments, including, you guessed it, more penetration testing.
Oh, wow.
But this time, it's on the system as it's operating in the real world, collecting real-world data.
That makes sense because things could change out in the wild.
Exactly. And they also emphasize having a very robust incident response plan in place.
Okay.
Because no matter how secure a system is, there's always a chance that something could go wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's not just about preventing attacks,
Yeah.
but also be prepared to respond quickly and effectively if one does occur.
So it's about minimizing the damage and getting the system back to a secure state as quickly as possible.
Exactly.
So the AVCDL covers everything from the initial design to ongoing maintenance and even emergency response. It's like a complete life cycle approach to security.
That's a great way to put it. But even the most well-maintained vehicle eventually reaches the end of its road.
That's true.
And the AVCDL even has a plan for that.
There's more. What happens when it's time to retire an autonomous vehicle?
That's where the decommissioning phase comes in.
Okay.
And just like with every other phase, security is still a top priority.
So even when the car is headed for the junkyard, there are still security considerations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The AVCDL emphasizes the importance of securely erasing or destroying any sensitive data that might be stored on the vehicle systems.
Yeah, I can see why that would be important. You wouldn't want that data falling into the wrong hands.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about ensuring that security is maintained from the cradle to the grave, so to speak. The AVCDL really takes a comprehensive approach to security, covering every stage of the vehicle's life.
This has been fascinating. I had no idea how much thought and effort goes into securing these vehicles.
It's truly remarkable, and it really highlights the commitment to safety and security in the autonomous vehicle industry.
But, we've talked a lot about the technical side of things,
Yeah.
but I'm kind of curious about the human element.
Mm-hmm.
How do the people involved, the developers, the engineers, the security experts, how do they all work together to make this happen?
That's a great question. The AVCDL addresses that as well.
Really? How so? So we talked about the decommissioning phase and how the AVCDL makes sure that data is destroyed securely even at the end of a vehicle's life. It's really impressive how much this framework considers every single stage.
Yeah.
But you were about to tell me how the AVCDL addresses the human side of all this.
Well, it recognizes that building secure autonomous vehicles isn't just about the technology.
Okay.
It's about people, too.
Right.
The AVCDL really emphasizes the importance of building a culture of security throughout the entire development process.
What does that mean, like, in practice?
It means that everyone who's involved, from the engineers writing the code to the suppliers providing parts,
Right.
everyone needs to be aware of and committed to security best practices.
So it's not just about having a bunch of rules.
Right.
It's about actually getting everyone on board with how important security is.
Exactly. The AVCDL encourages things like ongoing security training and awareness programs
Okay.
to keep security top of mind for everyone involved.
That makes sense because you can have the most sophisticated technology in the world.
Yeah.
But if someone makes a careless mistake, it can compromise the whole system.
Absolutely. And the AVCDL also promotes this culture of open communication and collaboration when it comes to security.
Okay.
It really encourages people to report potential vulnerabilities without fear of being blamed.
So it sounds like they're trying to create an environment where security is everyone's responsibility,
Yes.
not just the job of a dedicated security team.
That's exactly right. And that's one of the things that I find most remarkable about the AVCDL.
Okay.
It's not just a technical document.
Right.
It's really a guide to building a more secure future for autonomous vehicles by empowering the people who create and maintain them.
This deep dive has been really eye-opening. I had no idea how much goes into securing these vehicles.
It's a fascinating field, and it's constantly evolving
Yeah.
as technology advances and new threats emerge.
So for our listeners out there who might be feeling a little overwhelmed by all of this,
Yeah.
what's the key takeaway?
Well, I think the key takeaway is that the AVCDL provides a roadmap for building trust
Okay.
in autonomous vehicles. By following this framework, manufacturers can demonstrate their commitment to security and assure the public that these vehicles are being developed and deployed with safety and security as top priorities.
That's a great point. It's not just about protecting the technology, it's about protecting people and building confidence in this revolutionary technology.
Exactly. And as autonomous vehicles become more prevalent in our lives,
Right.
that trust will be essential.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful conversation.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
Of course.
And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has given you a better understanding of the work that goes into keeping those self-driving cars safe and secure.
Yeah.
Remember, knowledge is power. Stay informed, ask questions, and don't be afraid to demand transparency and accountability
Right.
when it comes to the security of this really exciting new technology.
It's an exciting time.
Until next time, keep exploring.